Can a wild pair of conures be tamed? What a good question. I had someone write in and say that they had a conure, they got a pair of wild conures that they're trying to tame. With the wild conures, the male keeps attacking the previous tame conure. What to do? What can you do? Hey guys, I'm Kaylin, the author of The Parrot, Bliss, and the new book, Get to Know African Grey and Cape Parrots. Get your copies on Amazon.com today. If you are here to learn a little about taming or get inspired, this is Duels, my Indian ringneck, who I am trying to tame. If you already knew Duels, then you know my mission is to try to increase your blissful bond, decreasing the need for rescues. Thank you so much for being here. If you're already a fan, I love my fan almost as much as I love my parrots. One thing that's really interesting that we need to know, I think there's a couple of good things to know when we're trying to tame parrots. One thing that is interesting to know is that hopefully a lot of breeders do what I do. I have a few birds I breed, like my parrotlets and my linneys. I have a few pairs, and we like to pull the babies, that means taking them out of the nest, when they are about, well, right about the age when they're opening their eyes. That can be 2 to 3 weeks. The reason for that is because when they open their eyes and they see us, they are going to perceive us differently than a baby that is fully raised by their parents. Now, to give you a reference point of that so you kind of understand what that means, I'm going to give you the best example I can think of, and here it is. I once saw a movie, it's supposed to be based on a true story, about a developer, I think it was like in the 60s or the 80s, I'm not sure. A developer that went down, I think to Brazil or a country like that, something around the Amazon. And he took his family. I think they were going to be taking some jungle down and building a building kind of thing. So when they were out and he was with his family and he was with the crew or whoever, they were out looking at the site. The young boy got kidnapped by a native tribe. For years, the father and the family looked for their boy who disappeared. And then the boy was like 4 or 5 years old when he disappeared. And then when the boy was around 14, something like that, they found him. At this point, the boy completely identified himself as one of the native people. He had taken a wife, within the tribe, and he completely spoke the native language. I don't know if he might have still spoken a little bit of English, but not a lot. And basically, the boy wasn't going to go. He had his place, and he no longer saw the father and his original culture as his own. He saw them differently. When we take a parrot, the whole reason that people look for a hand-fed parrot is because the parrot sees a person and they see that the person's taking care of them, and therefore they perceive the person differently. That means they physically, when they see them, it registers differently than a bird that is wild. And I don't know if this person's birds were caught in the wild or if they mean they're wild as in untamed. But either way, when they aren't tamed for whatever reason, they see humans and they see something different than a parrot that's tamed. That's one of the things I'm doing with Duels. I'm letting him spend time with me so that he physically might not be the right word, but he looks at me and he sees something different. He used to see someone who, gosh, I don't know how many, he's like 120 grams, I'm like 120 pounds. That's a huge difference. So he used to see me and be okay with flying to me very quickly for a treat. If I put my hand out, he could land, get the treat, and be gone. He built up to that so that that was safe. Now he sees that being on my shoulder is fine. We went for a walk around the neighborhood. It's fine. He could play with his harness. He still doesn't see me as someone he wants to be like this with, and he's an Indian ringneck, so he'll never want to be like this, but I am changing the way he sees me by giving him experiences that are slowly but surely letting him have a different perception of me. They're experiences that being repeated, and over time, he's going, well, maybe hanging out with her isn't so bad. Oh, I kind of like biting the cord. I kind of like burying myself sometimes in her hair. He is finding new things in this new experience of being with me. So the first thing about having a wild pair of conures is that they're not going to see the other conure or the human in a light of familiarity. And that is why the male is attacking the other conure. Even though it's a conure, even if they're the same species, the wild male knows that the tame male is different. He sees that, and it's like the culture thing. It's not my culture. It's not, so get away. I need to keep us safe. You stay away. The next thing that's really interesting and that I think you need to keep in mind is the person who wrote about the wild pair said they can't separate them because they can't get close enough. I'm not sure that separating them is going to be a good thing, because that is going to stress them out. So they're already undergoing the stress of a new environment, a new person, and at a biome level, their body is also having to get used to new bacteria. So they are experiencing newness at a lot of levels, which can be stressful. It can be shocking. To separate the pair on top of that is going to add to the stress, and I wouldn't do it because I know that that is too risky. It could work, but it could also cause health issues. It may be more than the birds can handle. Can a wild pair be tamed? Not really. Never say never, but not really, generally speaking, to the degree that a hand-fed baby can be tamed. So, for example, Duels is not like a totally out in the wild like you're going to find in India, Indian ringneck, because he was hand-fed. But, and so he's coming around. But I waited a little while to start to tame him, so it's taking him a while. Now, because he was hand-fed, he already sees me differently. It's not like I'm a complete alien stranger, the way he would be if I had gotten him from the wild. Again, even when we say a wild pair, whether they are caught in the wild, which makes it harder, or whether they are wild just because they haven't been tamed, they haven't been handled either at all or for a long time, in that category, it just makes it difficult. Here's another interesting thing. I once had a breeder tell me a story that once upon a time, when there weren't, for example, African greys in the US and they were being imported here, you would get a wild pair and there was no one to tell you how to take care of them, what to do, because no one had had them in the US before. So people would try different sized cages. They tried making putting plants around to make it darker so they had more privacy. Like, they tried all sorts of things. And no matter what, it took several years before the breeder, who came around and gave them fresh food and water every day, before the breeder could come without scaring the bejesus out of them. Why? Because the visuality is still, you're not my culture. You're not supposed to be in my landscape. I'm from the wild. This is how it is in the wild. This is how it's always been. And so when there's a change, it's like the program, so to speak, of the parrot says, this is not, I'm not supposed to engage over here. This is not going to be good for me. It's not going to be healthy. It's not natural. It's not anything that I should engage with. That is a lot of programming to try to override. So if I decided that for whatever reason, I was going to take on a wild pair, which I have a pair that falls under that wild category. They came from a very good breeder. They may or may not have been hand tamed, but they're not tamed now. They're a couple. I'm letting them be. I am not trying, like I say, hello. Sometimes we try to give them treats. I'm as kind to them as I can be, and I do not encroach upon their space, their cage, because I don't want them to feel scared and threatened. I understand that their conditioning is different, and it's very difficult to override conditioning. If you yourself have any feelings of self-doubt, a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-value, which are status quo, it doesn't make you aberrant, it makes you average. That's, we all have hopes, dreams, desires, and we all have fears, and we all have self-doubts kind of thing. If you have some of those doubts, they have been conditioned in. The conditioning is very hard to change. You can't sit there and go, I should be confident. It's very hard to override, especially genuinely. And so when we're asking a wild parrot to come and override the fact that they're wild and come be our friend, it's very difficult to do. So if I decided to do it, which I haven't decided to do it because I know, I don't see a reason to. So, but if I had a pair for whatever reason and I decided that it was important to do, like I decided to tame duels, I would do a lot of what I'm doing with duels, except I wouldn't put them on a harness and take them with me. I would put them in a room that I am in almost all the time. I would spend as much time at home with them as I could in their cage. I would put them in a room where I would open the door, and when and if they come out, I would understand that I'm not going to probably be able to get them back in their cage, so I'm going to let them for some time just have this room. So there's my space in this room, there's their space in this room, and I would let them take their time to get to know me, take their time to build up their confidence in the cage, in their new surrounding, in their new room. Why? Because until those things are established, everything else is going to be exceedingly difficult. Maybe not impossible, but very difficult. By being in the same space with them and letting them see me and see me and see me and see me and see me with no expectations, no trying to tame them, no trying to be with them, no trying anything except to live in the same space with them, then at their own pace, they're going to be able to come around. I would consistently keep a seed, like a dish of seeds by me. And frankly, if they come out of the cage and I go to bed at night or something, I would leave the dish of seeds by my chair, because that's still the association with me. The sooner they come to the seeds, to the treat, the sooner they're going to start to think that being in my proximity isn't so bad. It is a process that I would expect would take a long time. But I would be like, depending on how wild they are, I would expect them to come to the seeds when I'm not there by my chair, because they know it's my chair. I would expect it to take a month to 6 months, realistically. And maybe it would take less, maybe it would take more. Again, why? Because that's just not their programming. They need to write a new program, and there's no programmer. So I know that that's just going to take time. I hope that really, really helps, because there's nothing worse than wanting to bond with them, and it's not going to happen. If I were in that situation and I had a pair of conures that were bonded and that were wild, and I had a conure that was by itself, I would get another conure that is, of course, hand-fed to keep my conure company. I would make sure it doesn't have to be totally tamed, but I would make sure that it isn't completely wild kind of thing. I would make sure that the new conure either was a baby, which means I wouldn't be able to put them together until the baby was an adult. So either I would pick a baby, and that way I would know that the baby's tame, because I would tame it, I would spend time with it. Or I would pick up a conure that I was rehoming or something, or right now they're not uncommon to find in exotic bird stores that are about a year old, and that would be perfect. They're used to people, they're used to seeing people, they may not be totally tame, but that conure is going to be able to bond with my conure, and they will spend time with me. Depending on what species, I have mostly only experienced Puria species, but the smaller conures, that tends to be true. So I hope that helps, because I know it can be a very frustrating experience, and unfortunately, I don't know under what circumstances you got a, quote, wild pair, and again, I say quote because I don't know if they're caught in the wild or if they're just untamed, but I don't know if you quite knew what you were getting into, because that's pretty challenging. Jules has been kind of challenging to tame, and you can see that he's not doing bad, But I would shy away from taming a wild pair, whatever wild means. I would shy away from that. I'd be like, I don't know, why take that on? If generally speaking, when they're like that, it's so that they can breed. When you have a pair that's like that mostly just know how to relate to each other, that's mostly what they know, that's when they are more naturally able to relate and breed. That's one thing that gets done with African Greys. When a breeder wants to breed African Greys, one of the best things they can do is get babies, let the babies grow up together, let them bond, let them be together, and then let them relate. They don't get handled by people. They don't create a bond with people. That way they know their world, and within their world, breeding is more natural. Whereas when you have a pet pair of African Greys, they may breed, but they probably aren't going to breed prolifically every year the way they would in the wild, or the way they would when breeders set them up in really big cages that are 6 to 12 feet long with plenty of space outside and with each other in a more natural setting. I hope that really helps. If you need any awesome Valentine's Parrot merch, please visit shop.parrotbliss.com. If you want to join my my YouTube group, we meet on Discord and members get an extra video every week, then please visit parrotbliss.com and click on the red that says YouTube group. And if this really helped you, I would love a super thanks. You can go to parrotbliss.com, scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, and do the super thanks there. He got out of his harness. Look at that. Oh boy, he opened it. Because if you do it through my website, I am able to receive more of the super thanks, like 25% more or 35% more. I don't know, it's crazy. Thank you for joining me in this blissful video. If you have any questions or comments, please give me one of these and comment below. It helps my juice, and I will see you next time.